What are you afraid of? Do it!
It's back finally with some answers to the anomaly, but sadly more crew depression. As always, I'm Al, this is the Geek in Review, and I'm going to be talking about Discovery Season 4, Episode 5, The Examples. Also, Jet Reno's back, so I suppose that's something before we get into it. Okay, so what's going on is the DMA is moving about 1,000 light years in any direction, and Stamets and the crew figure out that it must be artificial, not natural, because it doesn't obey the laws of physics. We also get some name drops about who might be behind it, like the Metrons, the Icorians, and even the caretaker species. But sadly, we don't see any of those yet. I hope they will pop up. I've made a video about some of the species I'd like to see in Star Trek Discovery, and we haven't seen any of them yet, sadly. But it is great that they are name-checking some of these species, because we haven't heard from them in quite a while. And we also get a new character, a rising scientist called Ruan Tarkin, who's been working on the new spore tech for the fleet, and he's a bit of a Stamets fanboy. In fact, he's almost the new old Stamets in the way that Adira is the new old Tilly. And it does seem that this season that they are just giving new characters old character traits, as I just mentioned. He's very much the way that Stamets was when we first met him in Season 1. Very arrogant, very direct, to the point, and a bit of an ego on him. And I don't know why, because we haven't actually seen what this guy is capable of yet. He mentions that he's working on the same thing along the lines that Stamets was working on in Season 1. But he does say that there's room for improvement, but he doesn't actually mention what it is, which, I'll be honest, I did find was a little bit odd. He also wants to try and recreate a very micro version of the DMA on the ship. Which, if you ask me, if you're going to try and create a destructive force, wouldn't you want to do it away from everyone else, not trapped in a steel box, or a geranium box, or a programmable matter box in space? And because they are doing this on the ship, for me it did eliminate most of the danger that they were trying to build in these scenes, because they're not going to destroy the ship and kill all the main characters now, are they? But that's just part of the story this week. The crew have to rescue the inhabitants of an asteroid before the anomaly shows up, but there's a twist. Now, this is a ticking clock episode, which I do enjoy, and I think Star Trek needs to do a little bit more of this. The colonists leave prisoners to their fate, and Burnham, quite honestly, is not having it. She beams down with Book and Reese, who does get some screen time and more lines than he's had in the last 3 seasons, but that's about it. And speaking of the regular sort of back crew members, Washington and Detmer are completely missing in this episode. There's 2 other people at the helm in ops, and we don't really get any name or information on that. We also get Lieutenant Christopher back working communications, and Bryce is there, but what he's doing or what role he's playing now isn't exactly clear either. And also we do get quite a lot of use of the CGI wall, or the volume, whatever you want to call it here. I'll get to that in a minute. So Michael and Book decide to free the prisoners, and they just take their word on what they've done, that their crimes aren't that serious, which I thought, yeah, again, going back to the writing, that's not great. They should have kind of fact-checked that before letting people out of their cells to do God knows what. I mean, they could all be serial killers, and if anyone's going to tell you the truth, it's someone who's locked up and is about to die horribly. And this happens more than once in this episode. There's just a lot of really kind of sloppy, bad writing. I mean, this episode, sort of more than the rest of Discovery Season 4, is kind of at its core a traditional Star Trek episode that the crew need to go on a mission and sort of intervene and save some people. It's something that we've seen time and time again in TNG and Voyager especially, but it didn't really have any impact on me. As soon as they beamed down to the planet, that sort of CGI or volume wall just feels a little bit flat. No one really moves about that much. I mean, Book and Burnham just sort of stand there while they're trying to overcome these sort of robot beetles that are defending the prison. And at the end as well, we see one of the prisoners standing there, and yeah, I mean, it does. The wall does add a lot to what's going on, and definitely give it a bit more of a scope. But if we're not going to see any real depth to it, then it's just a kind of 21st century matte painting, if you know what that is. One of the prisoners that they let out wants to atone for their crimes because they just feel guilty about having killed someone, and I understand that. And at the end of the episode, this guy decides not to leave the asteroid and instead be destroyed by the anomaly. And yeah, I get that. The guy does feel guilty for what he's done. He sort of makes Burnham promise that he'll contact a member of the family to pass on something that he took from them. But hanging the emotional arc on this one-off character who we've never seen before and will never see again made me feel nothing. And that seems to be the theme this year, is that they're very focused on having these big emotional arcs. And talking about changing characters as well for a moment, Colbert is now sort of out of his medical role in the sort of general doctor GP fix wound sense, and is now more the counsellor on the ship, trying to help the crew deal with all these pitfalls and emotional damage that they've had. And all the way through this, although I do enjoy Colbert as a character, I do think he's gone downhill. And why aren't Starfleet just disbanding this crew and, trying to help them out, or putting more crew members from the 31st century like this Lieutenant Christopher on there? Because I've said it again, that there should be more people from the 31st century in the crew, because these guys have still got a huge sort of learning gap that doesn't really seem to be addressed, that they get thrown into situations and they kind of figure out what's going on. There's no point where it's like, well, we didn't have that in our time, so we don't really know what it is, and someone has to explain it to them. And again, it's just a missed opportunity. Now, I'm going to keep this reasonably short because I wasn't a huge fan at all of this episode, and I don't want to beat the series up too much. There's a lot of great things, like Kovacs was back and he's always enjoyable. We also get some Admiral Vance as well. But in terms of the scope and the storytelling, we're 5 or 6 episodes in, and this anomaly story is just crawling along. And the fact that they've now set it up that someone is causing it rather than it just being a natural phenomenon took a little bit of something away from me. In terms of these season-long story arcs, going from season 2 up until now, have they ever really paid off? Certainly the Burn one didn't. And the second season one with the Red Angel was just to reboot the series to get it into the 31st century. And again, I can't keep saying it, but the writing on this show is not great. All the ingredients are there, it's just they seem to be putting it in the wrong order. It's a bit like that episode of Friends where I think it's Rachel cooks and she makes a trifle, but there's a page missing from the cookery book, so she ends up making like half a trifle and half a Yorkshire pudding with mince at the bottom. And that's what this season feels like. It's people trying to put ingredients together that they don't know what it is and they don't know how it works. Yeah, some of the characters are great, but what they're doing with them isn't particularly. Since Saru has been back on Discovery, he's not really done much at all, to be honest. And yeah, I'm going to keep covering this show because I do genuinely 100% hope it gets better. I hope we get better stories for the characters, better developments, and my god, if this anomaly thing doesn't pay off, then yeah, a lot of people aren't going to be happy. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Did you enjoy this episode? Did you hate this episode? What do you think of the season so far? And what are your theories on the anomaly? Personally, I think that Ruan Tarka knows a little bit more than he's getting into, but I've got another video set up for which I'm going to explain that. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it, and if you've made it this far, as always, leave a like on the video. I'm going to be busy posting a lot of Matrix stuff this week for the big release coming out, so make sure you don't miss it, and as always, thanks for watching.